Welcome all back to another video. Specs here, returning with another review for you. We're rapidly approaching the holiday season, and with Thanksgiving around the corner, I'll say I'm thankful to receive a new incarnation with a twist, helming from the land of the Yautja. Today we'll be taking a one-way safari through the Badlands, where we'll be separating the Yautja from the boys. One of my favorite film franchises and lores of all time, getting so much love in the last few years, and you know what?
I want some more.
I'm referring, of course, to the 9th entry of the Predator franchise, Predator Badlands. Like all my reviews, this will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet and don't want to know, thou shall not pass. So, gear up and let's get to the hunt. We begin this installment on the planet Yautja Prime with a clan dispute between its leader and his two sons. The youngest, who happens to be the runt of the litter, named Dek, whose rite of passage we follow throughout the course of this film. Like all families, father orders elder brother to kill Dek,
Just sibling rivalry.
as he finds him to be weak and unworthy to be considered one of the clan. It's Fredo all over again.
You broke my heart.
Elder brother decides fuck that, activates his ship remotely for Dek's departure. Elder brother accepts the outcome of his defiance. Dek takes it very well and is sent to Genna, a volatile planet which is the home to an apex predator of monstrous ferocity, the unkillable alpha, the Kalisk. Dek, of course, vows to kill the Kalisk and claim it as a trophy so he can return to his father and finally be recognized as a worthy member of their clan, one whom commands respect and honor among the Yautja. As Dek arrives in Genna, he comes to find his journey won't be a solitary one, for he finds some companions. First, we meet Thea, a synth proudly manufactured by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, a company we've seen notoriously connected to the Yautja's cinematic arch-rival, the Xenomorph from the Alien franchise. Now, the film clearly is set in the future, and as we've seen in the past, this isn't the first time Weyland-Yutani Corp has come into contact with the Yautja, and with films like this, it probably won't be the last. Anyway, Thea accompanies Dek on his journey to the Kalisk in exchange for her lower half that was severed on a previous expedition to capture and detain the Kalisk. We're also introduced to another native resident of Genna, whom Thea names Bud, and off they go on their hellish tour through the monstrous terrain. As we, of course, venture into the remnants of Thea's original team, we're introduced to a reactivated Tessa, another synth who happens to be Thea's sister and also begins a hunt of her own, which inevitably will lead to the Kalisk. I'm sure Mother will be pleased. Both are portrayed by Elle Fanning, who I thought did a good performance. Throughout the film, we see the story through Dek's perspective, where he's the main protagonist in a Predator film, as opposed to the primary antagonist we're used to seeing in all the other previous films, which is a first. Now, this concept for me is a double-edged sword, because on one hand, it's good to see the Predator take center stage and be the proverbial hero in this chapter, which makes it fresh, unique, and moves the lore along, which naturally makes it stand out from the rest. I do think it's good to push the boundaries in cinema, provided I can get behind the concept and see how it could be adapted well in other mediums. On the other hand, there are some fans that enjoy to see what's familiar and entertaining to them, which turns into a never-ending cycle that produces the same content time and time again. For some, seeing anything different than what they're used to or would prefer is seen as an unwelcome change. Essentially, a kind of, if it ain't broke, why fix it sort of mentality. So from my perspective, Badlands is a juxtaposition of that concept. As we continue on, Dek encounters many of Genna's flora and fauna, observes their actions, and uses their defensive mechanisms as tools to survive and combat any uninvited guests. FYI, that to me isn't weak at all. On the contrary,
It's very smart.
Tessa begins tracking Dek. Dek meets the Kalisk. Dek gets owned in every sense of the word. We also come to discover the Kalisk can regenerate after being decapitated, mauled, or split. That must be every Yautja's bane of existence, going after prey that can't be killed or can regenerate automatically. We all know internally they must be going... Tessa and her team capture Dek and the Kalisk to begin their diagnostics, so to speak. Thea comes to the realization feelings aren't such a bad gig. Tessa disagrees, says fuck you, and has Thea decommissioned. If we learn anything in this film, is to never trust the ties that bind. The action and choreography was superb. I actually enjoyed a lot of the sequences, especially the earlier ones of Dek engaging in combat with his brother, some of the kills that we see, and the wildlife that inhabits Genna. We also engage in a battle between Synth and Yautja. Tessa gears up for a fight in a loader. I bet she has above a class 2 rating. Lo and behold, it's Dek versus Tessa, with Dek emerging victorious, claiming Tessa's skull as a trophy. Where is good old JR when you need him for some commentary, man?
Can you argue that point? Can you disagree with that? Hell no!
Dek returns home, proving his worth, demanding his cloak of invisibility from his father. Father has a difference of opinion. Dek disarms and restrains him, allowing for the ultimate insult to injury, with Bud claiming the clan leader's head as a trophy. As we end the film with Dek, Thea, and Bud awaiting the imminent arrival of Mother. Overall, Badlands wasn't a surprise, a really good one at that. A good story with solid performances all around from the cast. I also appreciate that they took a bold approach in doing something different with the franchise that we haven't really seen up until this point. The action is on par with what we've seen before, and expanding Yautja lore is and always will be encouraged. Some of the things I didn't like was the humor. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't watch these films to be engulfed with the healing power of laughter. These are sci-fi films and they should be treated as such. To be clear, I have nothing against a little humor here and there, but it's a bit overbearing at times and just very, very out of place. I'd also like to note, Yautja shouldn't be cracking jokes or conversing with individuals outside of their own. I don't care what anyone says. Secondly, I don't agree with the humanizing of the Yautja. Now, I understand Dek is who we follow from the perspective of the audience, but he doesn't need to be relatable. At the end of the day, he's an alien, an extraterrestrial. They don't need to be humanized to be appreciated or resonate with viewers. Some of us like to watch films that have an incredible lore, which the Predator franchise does have, and it's why I'm a massive Yautja geek to begin with. You don't have or need to make these characters human, because they aren't. In fact, I actually love them in spite of it. You think Jungle Hunter was humanized? Was City Hunter humanized to gravitate to the audiences? Or my boy Scar from AVP? Huh? You think that's fair to make a fictional, non-human character relatable? Ask my man Wolf. He'll tell you all about fair.
Absolutely.
All jokes aside, that's a trend I see increasingly now in films and series where they take all these fantastical, badass fictional characters that are of a different species and try to give them human-like personalities and tendencies. I understand why, but that still doesn't answer the more relevant question to me, which is, when is it ending? I find it distasteful. At the end of the day, it's okay for an alien to be an alien. It's okay for a shape-shifting monster to be a shape-shifting monster. Maybe it's a Disney thing. I mean, you see a lot of that in the MCU films, even Star Wars. Disney, as we know, owns 20th Century Fox, now known as 20th Century Studios, so they do own the rights to not just the Predator franchise, but also the Alien franchise, technically. Once more, the mouse swindles us again. But what are you going to do? There's a lot of hints and references they use for this film, whether intended or not, that I appreciate wholeheartedly. A large portion of this story is reminiscent of the Concrete Jungle storyline. If you guys remember that game and played it, let me know down below, because I think we all can agree that game was sick. They both have the premise of a Yautja who's been banned or exiled to a planet with an inhospitable environment and have to adapt to survive. In essence, the law of the jungle. That I really appreciated and thought was cool. I also really enjoyed the trophy wall on their ship. Reminded me instantly of the trophy wall we see on the ship belonging to Greyback and the Lost Tribe in Predator 2. All the Weyland-Yutani references, of course, connects this film with the Alien franchise, which is nothing new, but always welcome. Look, I could talk and discuss Yautja's xenomorph lore until the end of time, but to spare you from my ramblings, I decided to make this a wrap. That'll conclude this video. To sum up, Predator Badlands wasn't a bad film. I enjoyed the story. I appreciate the twist of the scenery from what we're used to. The action and visuals were on par. Yes, I have my unapologetic issues with it, but overall, it doesn't deter me from checking out future films. I really enjoyed Prey. Killer of Killers, which came out earlier this year, was badass. I want you to think about that. We got 2 Predator films in 1 year. Maybe that's a new trend that they start now. Who knows? Either way, that's a win in my book, ladies and gents. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to see more, do yourself a favor and focus your plasma caster to that subscribe button. Join Clan Noctis, because rest assured, I love this lore and always enjoy any opportunity I have or receive to discuss it. That being said, time for all of you to scat. Specs will be seeing you again real soon.